Good morning and welcome to Veterans Heartbeat on the Pulse of the Veteran, where we discuss issues of health, happiness, opportunity, and well-being of interest to the veteran community, their families, and the community who honors them.
Good morning and welcome to another episode of Veterans Heartbeat, brought to you by River, the Rural Institute for Veterans Education and Research. My name is Jason Zencraft. My co-host Ed Lisofsky is here with me, and he is the Executive Director of River. We welcome you to a weekly wide-ranging discussion of issues, events, opportunities, and needs in our veteran community. Morning, Ed. How you doing?
Morning, Jason.
We'd also like to thank our sponsor, Farside Signs. They create amazing-looking vehicle graphics that will drive traffic to your business. They are located at 1526 South Avenue West in Missoula. Follow them on the web, Instagram, and Facebook, or just stop on by.
Well, this morning we have Troy Downing, an Air Force vet who's also a combat vet, which kind of seems a little bit interesting in itself. So how does the Air Force end up in combat, Troy?
Well, I was in CSAR, Combat Search and Rescue, and we've been passed around back and forth. We were under AFSOC for a while, Air Force Special Ops Command, and then under Air Combat Command. But basically, the Air Force will not put assets in country at risk if there's not CSAR nearby to pull them out if something goes bad. So, our primary mission is when something does go bad to go out there and get them home.
Well, not only are you a successful businessman, but I'm really surprised to read up on some of your accolades with Warriors in Quiet Water, what you've been doing there for other veterans. And it's pretty exciting to hear about. Can you tell us a little more?
Yeah, no, that's something that's been very close to my heart for a long time. We just had our 10-year anniversary this year. And the premise of it sounds very simple, but it's incredibly effective and demonstrably effective. And what we do is we take post 9/11 wounded veterans and we get them out of the environments they're in, out of military hospitals, out of rehab, out of the programs that they're doing. We bring them to Montana, and we use fly fishing as therapy. And I have to tell you, like I said, it's something that's very close to my heart because time after time, when we bring these wounded veterans in, you see very often, classic symptoms of post-traumatic stress, of, just dealing with their injuries, sometimes physical, sometimes, mental, traumatic brain injury, TBI, post-traumatic stress, different things manifest. But you see this kind of, solitude and introversion and lack of trust, and the biggest thing is just lack of joy. And over the course of a week of teaching them a new skill in the backdrop of Montana, which as we all know is God's country, and we get them on waters in the state, we get them catching wild fish, and you see them slowly start to let go and to open up and start to smile again. And I have to tell you, I've been doing this for a long time, and it's very rare that I make it through a week with these warriors without shedding a tear of just joy watching that transition. And we're doing about 10 programs a year right now. And so one of the things that I always joke about is, it's important to have some kind of continuity afterwards. And I strive to stay in touch with the guys and girls that come through. And so my family just gets bigger and bigger and bigger every year, and I follow up with them, and I, share their joy and make sure that they know that we're still there. If they need to reach out, if they're having a bad day, they got somebody to talk to. And it's just been, a huge part of my life. And I started out, volunteering for the organization, and, I've helped fund it. I've helped raise money for it, and now I sit on the advisory board. And it's just been a great, great organization. And if I can plug it, I would love to. It's called Warriors in Quiet Waters. and you can find it online, warriorsandquietwaters.org. And, we always need support, and I would, love your listeners to take a look and support it if they can.
Well, that's exciting. I don't know if you've looked into what River is doing, but one of the things that I was kind of impressed with is you allow families to join in on the program also.
Right, and that's actually a very interesting program. So often when somebody comes through the program, because a lot of people don't realize, this is when somebody serves, it's not just them, it's their family, it's their significant others, it's, there's a whole bunch of people that get affected. And obviously when somebody is injured, there's their caregivers, their significant others. And so when we have somebody come through the program, we'll do, once or twice a year what we call a couples or a couples retreat, and we will invite them back to the program to bring their significant other, their caregiver through the program to also experience just the healing powers of Montana. And that's been a very popular program. And then one of the things that makes me smile the most is when we have alumni come back as volunteer companions, because they're so moved, so touched by the program that they'll volunteer to come back in a future program and be that volunteer companion for somebody else coming through. Because as you know, and as many of your listeners I'm sure know, there's a certain amount of comfort and a certain amount of trust when you're going through issues, to have somebody there that has been there too, that speaks the same language, that, who else to talk about being in a hole than somebody that's been in that same hole. And, there's two parts of that just make me smile is one, that we have people that are so affected by the program that they want to volunteer their time and come back and help others. And that it's just so effective. And, even though I am a combat veteran, I've never been in that place. I've never been injured. I've never been hurt. So even though I can talk the same language and, we have a lot of shared experience, I've never been in that dark hole. So as much as I get out of it personally, being part of that program, it would be great to at some point be worked out of a job, because we have alumni that have gone through that and gone through the program that are helping, the next rounds coming through. Altogether, it's just been an amazing experience. Like I said, it's been a big part of my life for a long time now.
Have you looked into the program we're doing at River?
I've looked at that very briefly, but I would love you to give me some highlights and what you're trying to accomplish.
Well, I don't know if you were informed of this by your staff. I function as a clinical suicidologist.
Yes, I'm aware of that.
What you're doing is you're trying to get to the upstream, is what we call it, and help the veterans before they go into that crisis where they become suicidal. So your program is so exciting on that one. We train veterans for a year to take them out into the mountains or into the quiet waters or wherever in groups and provide that same kind of therapy.
Right.
So what we're seeing is, just like you're seeing it, it spreads out and it spreads out. It's so interesting. One of the other things that we are working on is we've been battling the post-traumatic stress, and having dealt with a lot of these guys, we found a study from the VA where they pointed to an 81% correlation on a physical cause with post-traumatic stress.
Right.
And unfortunately, the VA in Montana does not want to follow that study, but Aaron is one of the results of being tested and following through with what we're doing. And it's a shame that we're not getting the support from the VA for their own research.
Right.
You're running for Senate. Can you tell me in your own words what you think a senator can do for the veterans?
Absolutely. One of the things that frustrates me, and I went into the service, after having a career in the private sector, and I'll tell you, when I went in on the operations side, I loved it. I loved the people that I worked with. I loved the mission. I loved the training. I was very much engaged, very excited about all those parts. One of the things that really frustrated me was on the bureaucracy side, on the paperwork side, on the, there were just so many inefficiencies compared to a private sector version of that. And when I look at the VA, I look at the same kinds of issues. I look at a broken bureaucracy, and I keep coming back to that same thought and that same idea that there are very few things that the government can do better than in the private sector. And, my own experiences with the VA have been horrendous. And, my experiences with the experiences I've had with friends, I'm a VFW member in Belgrade, and friends that have had to deal with the VA here in Montana. I've just heard these horror stories. And one of the things that really keeps coming back to me is it's not being run like a private sector business. There's, not the level of accountability. There's not, the need to excel and stay alive like you would in the private sector. And it really, really frustrates me. I mean, even for, my own experience, I went to sign up for the VA at one point, and I went online and started going through the application process. And you have to go to the get your personnel records from your service and your DD-214s. And I went through this process where they found all my awards and decks. So, I had a Global War on Terrorism ribbon. I had a, Afghanistan campaign medal. I had an aerial achievement medal. I had all this stuff from, serving in Afghanistan. But they couldn't find any record that I'd actually deployed to Afghanistan. I'm going, you got to be kidding me. You've got all these pages of awards and decks from being there, and you're saying you can't, my DD Form 214 hadn't been filed in the proper place to, actually show I'd been there. I mean, it was just the most ridiculous thing. And they said, okay, well, we'll look into it, and you should hear back from us in 6 months. 6 months came and passed. I never heard back from them. So I had to, eventually I called my last duty station. I said, what's going on? And somebody there, fixed the problem. But I mean, it's just indicative of, of a government run bureaucracy that's not there to, or not being run in an efficient way that you would if it were, a private company. And so one of the things, with the VA, I mean, I think, obviously it's being talked about a lot, and the problems, the accountability issues there. But, I think we need to start looking to alternatives to the VA. I think we need to start really looking at, helping our servicemen and women with, more modern tools.
Let me ask you this question on that one, okay? Hate to interrupt, but I want to ask. Senator Tester, he went down that path with Veterans Choice. It was a good.
And ran out of money, right?
It was a good start, but the problem was it was not managed correctly.
Yes.
Now, in my practice, I know of 2 veterans in the state of Montana that have completed suicide because they were being hounded by bill collectors after Choice didn't pay the bills.
It's horrible. Absolutely horrible. That should never happen.
Secretary Shulkin, and I've talked to him about this, put forward a bill request that a doctor can certify a veteran as needing this kind of care outside the VA. So that way the doctor gets paid. Because right now, last year, River gave over $600,000 in services to the veterans in a general medical practice. Okay? The reason that we gave that is we're qualified to bill the VA, but under Choice, we can't bill the VA unless the general practitioner who is overseeing that person's care sends them over to us. Now, the problem with that is they have to wait 6 months to see the doctor to send them over just for a general physical or general problem.
Right.
And that's crazy. So
no, it is crazy, and that's crazy. And I mean, we can take up this entire interview talking about VA craziness. I mean, even just a really quick one. One of the guys that's in my VFW post was telling me a story about needing an eye exam, and he told me that they made an appointment for him in San Francisco. He lives in Belgrade. And he says, well, they offered me 2 days in a hotel room, and I'm just going, who thinks that's reasonable? And the problem is, especially, trying to do a cohesive system like that in rural America, is there's different problems. We need to have different solutions for those problems. And, a lot of service members are obviously coming off, after having spent their entire military career with TRICARE. And I think that we need to start looking at more TRICARE-like options for those, especially in places where it's not reasonable to get to a VA hospital. It's not reasonable to get those referrals or those appointments, and we need to start looking at something that, like I said, is a more modern tool. And it's just frustrating. And I mean, I'm sure you've got 100 stories. I've got 100 stories. We could talk about this all day, but it's clearly a broken system. And I think we need to start looking at more solutions that are less government bureaucracy and more like real world, private company solutions.
We are introducing next week the HEART program. 300 plus nonprofits in the state of Montana. Okay?
Okay.
How does a veteran, you come off of active duty, if you're having any issues at all, how do you access that care? One of the issues we've seen is the veteran organizations don't always play nice in the sandbox.
Right.
It's a reality.
Right.
I'm not saying one is better than the other. What we're doing is we're going to train up volunteers across the state. We're going to put in a database, and Wells Fargo was kind enough to give us a grant to do this. We just hired a social worker to help us coordinate this. What that social worker will be doing is working with these volunteers to do a needs assessment. The needs assessment comes in, and it is distributed without merit across to all of the nonprofits that want to sign up and receive these veterans' needs assessments so that they can say whether or not they can help them. Simple process, simple solution to at least expanding and getting some kind of continuity of care.
Right.
So that's the kind of issue that we need to address in a simple manner that a private sector can do that it doesn't seem like the government's able to. I don't know.
Right. Well, I mean, that is across the board. I mean, we're not just talking about a VA issue there. We're just talking about, the government trying to do anything right. I mean, and that's what really amazes me in a lot of the, modern, political discourse, even that people consider that a single payer, medical insurance program or healthcare system is something that's reasonable. I'm like, let's look at anything that has, well, not anything, but most things that have a private sector, corresponding business. I mean, if you've got something important that you need to get to New York tomorrow, you're going to go to the post office or you're going to go to FedEx. I mean, just start looking at that over and over again. And I think that, what private sector solutions bring is, accountability.
And competition.
And competition, exactly. And so, you end up with better results. And I think that we need to look more and more seriously at that because, ultimately, I don't think the government is particularly good at doing anything. I just want them out of my life. Real simple. They're there for national security, infrastructure, basic things. Not to be that involved in so many aspects of our life because they just don't do it well.
Well, I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit, okay?
Sure.
And if you say no, that's okay. But on Veterans Day, we ran a clinic last year. We're going to do the same thing. In 2 hours, we saw over 120 veterans here in Missoula. We'd like to invite you up here to see what we're doing.
I would love to do that. I know that, and I don't have my schedule in front of me. I know we've said yes to a couple of Veterans Day events, and I will tell you if it at all works in our schedule, then we will make it happen. I just don't have that in front of me because I would love to be there.
Even if that doesn't happen, I understand scheduling. I mean, that's putting somebody on the spot, and that's not fair. And we don't try to do that on Veterans Heartbeat. We would like you to come up and spend a day at River and look at some of the research, talk to some of our researchers, look at the possibilities that are out there that, I'm going to be real honest, hell, this thing's outgrowing me. I'm not a CEO at your capabilities.
Right.
And get your advice.
I would be honored to come and get a tour of what you're doing and meet your people, and I'd be honored. So we will make that happen.
We've talked a lot about your veterans issues, and that's what Veterans Heartbeat is. Is there something you want to tell our listeners why they should support you for your campaign for Senate?
Well, my main goal and the reason that I'm doing this is, I felt a call to serve when I joined the military. That was post 9/11, and I feel that call again. And what I'm trying to accomplish here is, I came from very meager background, and I did not grow up with anything, and realized early on that anything that I had to work for, and I built my American dream. And I see that American dream being threatened right now. I see our federal government getting deeper into our lives, more intrusive, complicated taxes, high taxes, complicated regulation. And I see that taking that potential of the American dream away from our kids, our grandkids. And that scares me. And one of the things that I see is, contributing to what's going on and our inability to get anything done in D.C. right now and move the ball forward for the American people is establishment politicians, of career politicians and lawyers that we're sending there that get comfortable and not doing the work of the people. I think we need to start looking at people from our communities that have done something relevant to being an American today. Somebody that's, built a company, made a payroll, served in the military, done something outside of politics that has relevance to being an American. Send them to D.C. to represent you as a representative, not as anything else, to represent, to make decisions, to advance, the ball for the American people. Go do the work and go home. This should be a service and not a career. And I think that I have a unique background and a unique set of non-politician problem-solving skills that I want to see more and more people like that doing the work of the people in D.C. People that have have skills fixing problems outside of politics.
Troy, we just had one of our other students who is a dog handler that has done sweeps for President Bush and President Clinton. Just walked in the room. He's starting a dog business here in Montana. He wanted to say a quick hello to you.
Great.
Hello, how you doing?
Nick, great to meet you.
Nice to meet you, too.
You're building a business now, and you were a veteran as well?
Correct, yes, sir.
Well, great. I mean, that's, I love stories like that. I love it when people come out and start to build something. Because as you know, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners know, you come out of a service career, and you were the best at what you did, and you had a team, and you had your team members' backs, and you knew that they had your backs, and you had this sense of purpose, importance. And when you separate from military duty, most of us are not going to thrive or even survive as Walmart greeters. You need to be doing something that's meaningful, and building a company like you're doing is meaningful. And I love hearing stories like that, and I wish you tremendous success.
Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
That is one thing real quick, and then we're going to let you go, Troy. We stumbled on this. We have an incubator for our students, and we've got about 5 students now building businesses here.
Awesome. Yeah, I'd love to hear more about that. And when I come up, I'd love to meet these people.
All right. Thank you, Troy.
All right. Thank you.
So thank you very much for listening to Veterans Heartbeat. We'd not be able to bring it to you without all the support of the listeners. And thank you again to Farside Signs for sponsoring the show. If you do need a unique vehicle design, swing on by and check them out. Also, thank you to our main sponsor, River. River has an array of services such as veterans-focused education, a vestibular disorder clinic, and now non-pharmaceutical treatments for pain, anxiety, and depression. Check them out on Facebook or on the web at riverofchange.org. Lastly, we'd like to show our appreciation to all of our veterans. Thank you for serving our country and keeping it safe.